got people who essentially need to make more money in order to survive and live. We were talking earlier, I said it now costs me, for Mike and I to eat in a week, it costs us what it used to cost us when we had 3 kids that we were feeding in their young and teenage years, and which is
Oh
killing
yeah.
us. But it's the same thing. You look at these individuals, you really want to hire good people that represent your practice really well. And at the same time, you want to provide this great service.
Let's just get this kicked off. I'm just curious, Stevie. What's going on? What's going on with the price of burgers right now? I was just in Phoenix, and I was
Oh
like, I
my
can't believe I
God.
paid $25 for a burger and
Yeah.
fries. Like
Yeah.
everything has
Isn't
gotten
that
so
nuts?
insanely expensive, and that's without a
Yeah.
drink, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Like,
It's crazy.
like,
It's absolutely crazy.
what do you think it was like maybe 5 years ago, like pre-COVID? That same price in a burger, like
I
what did you
bet you it
pay
was
last
like
time?
I bet you it was like $14. I bet you it's gone
14
up.
bucks
Yeah.
with a drink or without a drink?
Probably without a drink, but I'm
Okay.
going with $14. That's my
Okay.
guess.
It's insane. I was in Phoenix
Yeah.
and it was 25 bucks. I was in Seattle like maybe like 4 weeks ago. And it was like same
Oh.
thing. It was like close to 30 bucks. And it wasn't even a good burger, you know?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
forcing you to
But
McDonald's now.
we just look at like the price of food down here, and both of us are like, there's only 2 of us at home anymore, and it's costing us what it cost us when our kids were like in their teenage years and were eating us out of house and home.
Yeah.
And it's 2 of us.
Yeah, 100%. That's so crazy. That's so crazy. And
Yeah.
you guys start
Yeah.
thinking about what impact it has on business and on staff, right? So we'll dive a little more about that today. And so we are live. I just want to welcome everyone to the Click Boss Show. I'm Rick Lau. I'm your host. And so quickly, my stories: I grew, exited 127 locations, now a $37 billion grocery store, own my clinics, and now I make Instagram videos for a living, right, Dee?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and this podcast or this show is like my journey to learn from the top healthcare entrepreneurs on how to get smarter in business and in life. And if this sounds like you will love our show, right? And so today we have a special guest. We have Dee Bills. And why do we bring in Deals? Just quickly, Dee is a practice owner and she is known as a front desk guru, okay? She's trained hundreds and hundreds of front desks on everything from cancellations, no-shows, to messaging or not getting enough new patients, scheduling, not collecting money, and patient drops, of which is kind of the lifeline like of our business. And so, Dee, thanks for coming. And I'm just curious, like, how did we meet, Dee? Do you remember how we met?
I think another practice owner referred us, gosh, how many
Was it
years
Paul
ago
Wright?
now? No, I think it was Neil. I think Neil
Okay.
Trickett referred
Neil
us.
Trickett?
I
Okay.
think that's how, either that or some of my clients were talking about me and it
Did we
got in
meet
your
in
ear. And
person or was it an online thing?
no, it's been online. I can't wait to meet you in person.
Okay, wow, wow, and it's so super cool to have you on show. And why is it they call you the front desk guru? I don't understand. Like, why did you come up with that name? Like, why do people call you the front desk guru?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long story, but I guess the short end of it is Mike's practice was really struggling, and I was at a financial course, and this guy was talking to all these practice owners. He's like, make more money, make more money. And of course, being a PT, I raised my hand and I'm like, yo, dude, we're stuck with insurance and all this crazy crap. How the heck do you want us to make more money? And he kind of slapped me upside the head in that moment. He's like, you got to find all the places you're bleeding money, you're bleeding, patients, right? If you want to make more money, you need to be more efficient at getting patients through your door and showing up and, scheduling. And so he kept talking and I stopped listening and was like, I'm not going to say my clinicians weren't a part of it, but it was front desk, front desk, front desk. And it really led me to believe that my front desk just wasn't, I recognized they weren't well trained. They didn't know what they didn't know. They are really nice people predominantly. And it was just a real
How you
struggle.
become
And
the
I
guru?
realized we didn't train them.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
became the guru because I solved all their problems and taught them how to manage patients to get them to schedule and show up, and handled all those problems. And practice owners started reaching out and they're like, hey, you're like the guru of this. And I'm like, whatever. And they're like, no, really, you're like the guru in this. You've solved these problems. And one of my good friends, who's a total smart aleck, I'll keep my language good here on this show. He's like, no, Dee, you're like the front office guru. And I'm like, and I kept resisting it. And then one day I was like, this is what I want to do. And Mike just looked at me and said, go do it. And I just started working with practices. And that's kind of how, that's the long of the short of
That's
it.
awesome. That's awesome. I don't even
Thanks.
know you. I didn't even know your name was D Bills. I was always knowing your name as the front desk guru, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's
so
all
D,
right.
so D, you've seen hundreds of like worked with hundreds of front desk staff. I'm curious, what is the most scandalous like scenario you've seen with the front desk? And I'll share you mine, and then I want to see if you have something that is like just as juicy or scary. So one of the most frequently asked questions I get is, how can you help me grow my clinic? So every year we put together an annual event called the Clinic Boss Summit. It's basically the Woodstock for everyone interested in growing or selling your multi-million-dollar practice. You're going to meet over 300 of the world's top clinic owners. The network is going to be insane. It's 3 days. You're going to learn everything from marketing, finance, HR, recruitment, and sell your clinic. And the best part, it's going to be Orlando, Florida on January the 26th. It's one of my favorite cities to hang out in January because you get the sunshine, palm trees, and best theme parks. We usually sell every year within the first couple of months, so grab your tickets now. Go to clinicaccelerator.com to grab more details. When I used to own my clinics, I had this one front desk who stole about $15,000 from me. It was done through like cash deposits, right? You know, and I treated her very well. And it got to this point where she felt guilty. And she actually came to me after taking care of her over the past couple of years, like, hey, I want to confess that I've been stealing this amount, but I can't pay you back. And then like she felt so much guilt. She was also on the verge of like suicide. She was going through some like mental health stuff. And I felt so bad that I actually paid for her counseling for the next year. Okay. And I gave her a second chance, D. Okay.
That is so my Canadian friends. So did she ever make amends?
Well,
did she ever like make amends?
She stole again.
Get the heck, that's dude, man. What's that saying?
It was insane. And this is what I realized with people, right? After managing thousands of people, it is very difficult to change people unless they go through some significant crisis in their life, you know, whether it's divorce, health, loss of job, or something significant. But people typically have repeatable like patterns of behavior. So if you're wanting to change someone, it's very difficult, right? So Dee, I want to hear from you. Like that's one of the most scandalous front desk story. Like what's something that you seen and heard?
Beat that one. I don't know if I can beat that one. I legit.
You have to do it for the show. You have to do it for the show.
I will tell you though, you're not the first person that's told me that. I've actually had that on more than one phone. When I do free calls, people have told me that where their staff have stolen from them, and they do it. It's funny though, would you say that they do it in a way, they do more work to steal and hide it than it would take to just do their daggone job in the first place? Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're so, and honestly, you're telling me about that. I'll never forget the day Mike came home. This was back when he worked at the hospital and he managed all the PT clinics in the hospital. And to take that one step further, in the United States, if you steal from a huge corporation, the FBI shows up. And one day they're all sitting there and they're treating patients, and the FBI walks in the door of the main hospital practice, and they're all like, what the heck? And they came for this one woman, and she had been stealing systemically from the hospital system for like 2 years. Wow. And she stole a lot of money. So but what have oh gosh, you know, I mean, I certainly have, mine is not scandalous. Mine is more the realization is
something juicy.
Well, I mean, one of mine would be I mean, this one isn't even juicy, but it's real. And I think it's real to some practice owners too, in the sense that when I first took over the front desk and started managing them for Mike, I said we didn't have training and things like that. But I realized I had Eeyore working at my front desk. So, from Winnie the Pooh, where Eeyore's like, oh, I lost my tail. Oh, well, kind of thing. I had an Eeyore at my front desk. And so one day my mother-in-law calls me and she goes, call the clinic. And I'm like, I'm on my way there. She goes, call the clinic. And I'm like, why? She goes, call the clinic. So I call the clinic and Eeyore answers the phone, good afternoon. How can I help you today? And I'm like, oh my God, right? This is the first, last, and main point of contact for every patient.
Yeah.
And they were answering my phones. And this, for me, that was a huge, like, oh man, I got to fix that moment.
Yeah.
And that's a part of what I do too, is help you to find better staff. Because
Were you pissed when you heard that? Like, were you steaming? Like, because when I used to get at my clinics, if my front desk doesn't answer the phone, or they do that exact same voice they talk because they don't want to be there, I'm steaming, because I'm spending a boatload of money on marketing, and I'm questioning why the marketing is not converting. And at the same time, I'm like, oh my God, it's actually me. It's actually my clinic.
Well, it motivated me. It didn't make me mad. I was like, oh crap, she's got to go. But it motivated me to find better staff. And so I started interviewing like crazy that day. I mean, I put ads out. I was bringing people in. I was going to solve this problem. I was going to find the perfect person. And in that same time, I was trying to convince Mike, hey, I need 2 people. And Mike's like, we can't justify 2 people. And I'm like, I need 2 people. I want to stagger their hours and really nail this. And, so I'm arguing with my husband in a loving way about, I need this. But then at the same time, I'm like, I need to replace her. Well, I got to 2 people, and I'm literally walking through the front office, and she's already helped. She's been in the interview process in the sense that she's heard me bringing these people through, and she's seen them. And I'm like, I just kept going, I really want to hire both of them. How do I do this? How do I convince Mike to have 3 people? Right. Because I'm saying this in front of her. And the day I'm supposed to make the offer, I still haven't decided. Am I going to hire Suzette? Am I going to hire Natalie? What am I going to do? And Mike leaves. And all of a sudden the garage door opens and he comes back and he's like, I have a present for you. And he hands me his phone. And without being explicit here, there were a few words prior to the I quit part. I left my keys on the desk and Eeyore quit. And I was able to hire both of those people that day. So I was able to just turn my front desk over and be like, you're out the door, Joe. And there they went. Yeah. And so it felt really good for me, it was the scandal of, I essentially, was able to get Eeyore to exit stage left and put in the 2 people I wanted. And that's really where my training really started.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
So
I don't have the money scandals. Thank you, God.
Oh man, I could write a movie about that stuff.
You're not alone.
And the fact that she stole twice. And I paid for her therapy because I felt like, I want to, how do I say this? Like, I want to help her through this, because I'm an extremely loyal person. And then I still get burned. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm too optimistic with humanity. So in the very beginning, we talked about expensive burgers are, right? How things are getting super, super expensive. Right now, when you think about kind of what's going on with the economy, with the news, and some of the changes are happening within our industry. What are you most concerned with right now relating to the front desk? The people that work at the front desk.
Well, I mean, you have to look at, I know in Canada, things are a little bit different for you guys, but our reimbursements just keep going down. And that's really actually where everything started for me 12 years ago. Was Mike's like, we can't afford to be here if we don't fix something. And that's how we ended up in that financial thing. And it's still in play, in the sense that you've got people who essentially need to make more money in order to survive and live. We were talking earlier, I said it now costs me, for Mike and I, to eat in a week, it costs us what it used to cost us when we had 3 kids that we were feeding in their young and teenage years, and which is killing us. But it's the same thing. You look at these individuals, you really want to hire good people that represent your practice really well. And at the same time, you want to provide this great service. But in the States, the reimbursements are going down and down. And so it makes it harder and harder for us to...
So declining reimbursements and then increasing like wages and inflation
Oh,
is like
yeah.
you're kind of, you know what, I was I told you earlier, I was in Phoenix speaking at the Web PT event. I think there was
Yeah.
450 practice owners, and I met all these like American, I met all these different clinicals in different states, and one of the states, I think it was New Jersey, and 80% of his business was Medicare or Medicaid. It
Oh
was
God. Yeah.
35 bucks a visit. You know what?
Hmm.
You know what I told him? I was like, dude, go move to Washington.
Hmm.
Go to a
Oh
different
yeah,
state.
absolutely.
Like, why
Absolutely.
would
If
you
you want to do
why would
that.
you
Mhm.
why would you do this grind of like 35 bucks like a visit, you know?
Yeah.
Right? Like it's
Yeah.
just like the cards are kind of like stacked against you, right?
Yeah.
Regardless
Yeah.
of like declining reimbursements, but even declining $35 to $31, right? You know?
I agree with you on that. And it's interesting. We got rid of United Healthcare in our practice this year. We just kicked them to the curb. We said, we're done. We're done with that contract. We'll take you as
Yeah.
patients, but you're going to be out of network, and
Yeah.
or you can go cash pay, you can file it yourself, but we were done. And the reason we were done is because it stopped being, there's no value for us. We have to fight for 3 visits at a time, and
Yeah.
it's not helping the patient, and it's making our lives, us, less efficient, which is what I was saying earlier. I mean, if you want to be able to if you want to have great staff and be able to pay those great staff, you have to give them what they need to be efficient and effective and
Yeah.
really help your business. Because if they're just there doing the basic level job, the practice isn't making more money. It's not able to survive and then thrive on top of that.
So D, how do we do this? Like,
Yeah.
let's just like, every single state, let's be honest, is declining reimbursements, right? And
Yeah.
yes, people are kicking out this payer to be out of network. So maybe you could charge more, do better
Yeah.
on direct to consumer marketing.
Yeah.
Maybe you could get, more money coming that way. Like, so, and then you got your typical front desk turnover. They're lasting for 1 year, 2 years. A lot of them just want to leave their
Yeah.
profession. They make more money being an Uber driver, or
That's
maybe
right.
like a delivery person, or even like working in like a, yeah. Anyway. So what can you what can a practice owner do right now
Yeah. Yeah.
to
Well, I
keep,
mean,
like, specifically the front desk? Like how can we keep it almost seems like it's a broken model, right?
it is a broken model. It is.
With like the cards stacked against you, unless you go
Yeah.
like, all these people are talking about, I want to do cash PT, but let's be honest, cash PT is a small segment of,
Yeah.
like, it's like that 10% of the 90% of the business, right? Right? Yes, you could
Yep.
do some that could fuel that, and I'm
Yeah.
talking about like not like $100,000 or $200,000 practice. I'm talking about a multi-million-dollar practice, right? You can't
Yeah.
shift that quickly. So
Yeah.
what experience can you give for practice owners who are kind of in that situation where like they have to pay, like they don't have the profits, or maybe they do and they don't want to pay? Like how would you tackle this front desk issue and
Yeah. Well, I
wages?
mean, you have to get, everybody's talking about marketing, right? Oh, you got to promote more. You got to promote more. You got to promote. But the thing that everybody has to realize is, first of all, your front desk sits at the end of that marketing funnel. And so they have to know how to convert evals faster. And right, because you're less efficient if you have this big, long, I was just talking at the conference this weekend about this. You got this big, long list of leads that are sitting there, right? You've got this long list of leads, and they're just sitting there on this sheet. And your front desk is not motivated to go back to them and try to call them again. So you've got to the first thing you have to do is convert those leads and those new patients and the returning patients, get them scheduled on the first phone call, not having to call them 3, 4, 5, 6 times. And it doesn't matter whether we're in the US or Canada. I have a woman in my platform who's from Botswana. She's amazing. And the biggest thing we all deal with is these people that are calling us, don't know what we do, right? They don't know how we help. A lot of them, do you ever see this in your practices where people call and they get on the schedule and they think that in one visit, you're going to have them totally fixed and handled? And that's because we live in a instant message society, where I can text you,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you would have
100%.
that up in Canada. And so the first thing we have to do is be able to teach them how to convert those leads faster and get more leads converted, because then we're not spending as much money on marketing and promotion. I'm not crapping on those out there that are
All right, so
selling
D,
systems.
I'm just gonna sum that up. You're saying that you should like maybe allocate those resources instead of marketing, focus on maybe the put in the front desk budget to actually
Yeah.
increase your conversion rates, to be able to
Yeah.
drive more maybe revenue per hour,
Yeah. Yeah. You got to recognize, Rick, that everybody in your practice that's front facing, right? So anybody that's on your phones, anybody that's sitting at your front desk, anybody that's treating your patients, they all are involved in sales all the time, right? Sales is not just this one thing. Oh, I got them scheduled. No, a sale is to get them to schedule an eval. A sale is to get them to show up for the eval, to get them to agree to whatever the payment is, right? And then agree to this plan of care that's 10 or more visits in a lot of cases, and then to keep showing up. All of that is a sale. And so being able, if you really want to be more efficient and effective, all of your staff need to be trained in sales. They need to be able to sell and help that patient.
So D, if your front desk is your sales team, which I 100% agree they are, right? Mm-hmm. Do you recommend setting up a sales compensation plan for your front desk team so that the practice owner wins at the same time with higher conversion rates, with higher bookings, with higher like evals being booked?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the front desk 5 metrics is conversions, right? So absolutely, but they have to be at a high level. They have to be converting at 90% or better so that you think about, I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but it goes back to how much is every patient worth to your practice, right? And it's a really easy calculation. It's the average reimbursement. So if you know what your average reimbursement over the last 3 to 4 months was, you get that number, and then it's the number of visits to discharge, and it's not the plan of care. It's the number of visits completed to discharge, and it's an average. So if I had 100 patients,
what's the average that you see typically? Like eight visits, 10 visits, 12?
That ranges across the country. Some of my practices, my Midwest practices or my middle states practices, it's probably closer to like 14 in a lot of cases. But then I call them the bookends, right? My East Coast and my West Coast, it ranges a lot further. And in many cases, it's closer to like 8 to 10 visits max. And it's really but you have to remember that visits to discharge, that factors in the percentage of drop-off patients. So you can get really efficient managing your practice if you know what your average visits to discharge, because it accounts for drop-offs, it accounts for people that only come for the eval and aren't sold, and it accounts for your patients that are successfully completing care. So if you're calculating that number as a practice owner, I feel like that's a really good number to have, because now we can look at that and we can say, okay, that affects how valuable a patient is to your practice. If I'm only doing 8 visits to discharge because I have a lot of drop-offs that are only making it to visit 5 or 6, and that's bringing my number down, and I know that the patient population I'm treating is usually closer to 12 visits for discharge. Well, I know right then and there I'm losing on average, if it's $100 per visit, you see what I'm saying? Like average reimbursement.
Yeah, it's just a math game.
That's a $400 loss on average if you look at it across,
So D, what you're telling me, there is no reason why a practice owner should not be able to pay their front desk more, because there's a lot of money left on the table.
Yeah.
And if you do feel like it is
salary, it's not in salary, it's in bonusing.
Yes. Right. And so what's your total comp? Like if like in the software, in a lot of industries, they like to use something called like OTE. So this is based, if you add up what percent of their compensation is actually based on bonuses, is it 10%, 20%, 30%? Like what's a number that you like to see based on them hitting certain like metrics that actually drive like revenue and P&Ls?
I think you have to look at it. The first thing you have to look at, and this really comes from the financial guys I've worked with, is the practice has to be making money first, right? Don't go bonusing staff if you can't pay yourself. I mean, there's so many practice owners out there that aren't paying themselves. And I'm not talking give yourself a $500,000 a year salary and say, until I get to that, I'm not going to bonus my people who are on the front end. But you have to make sure that the practice is able to pay its bills, that money is coming in. And really it's percentage, it should be across the entire practice, not for the evals, but like the practice, if you're bonusing one, you got to have metrics in place to bonus all of them. And then it really comes down to, look, if I'm at 90%
Percentage do you,
and
what percent of their salary you think you should be? Just
oh,
high level.
salary, I would
Yeah.
say per visit. I would say your average visit. I would say, 10 to 15% max of your average
Okay.
per visit fee of that eval converted. And it's
Okay.
converted, and then there's the arrived part of it too, right? It's not just, oh, I got 30
Sure. So
people on the schedule.
outside the metrics, are you telling me that like if a front desk makes $50,000, they're eligible for a bonus of 60 to 65,000? Like that would be reasonable?
You guys are paying 50,000. Okay, so
No,
that's
no,
not.
I'm just using an example. Like
Oh, okay.
maybe
I'm just like, yeah. Well, I mean, you have to look at that too. You have to look at how much you're paying this person on the front end.
yeah.
I'm metrics based. I'm going to be really honest with you. And it started from my first front desk person that I ever hired. She said, look, you are paying me to do a job. You're giving me a salary to do a job. So
Yeah.
if you're going to bonus me for going above and beyond that number, not
Okay.
just because I showed up and did my job. And so,
So if they did their job over and beyond, what
15
percentage more would you give them? Like 10, 15%? Is that kind of your number, D?
it still goes back to 10% would
Okay.
probably be, but you have to look at that again, they have to be hitting their weekly metric, and the practice has to be making money in that week.
Because here's the dilemma I see, Deal. In theory, everything you talked about is great, but I'm talking about the reality. Reality is a clinic owner isn't making money, and they're posting a job for $16, $18 an hour. They got terrible quality. And even if they hire someone, they stick around for 6 months, it wastes all this time training, and they don't do that, and like and they're not spending money on marketing, right? So what advice would you give to someone like that?
Well, how are you training them? I mean, are you really training them, or are you giving them on the job training, and Sally's training Sue, and Sally kind of sucks to begin with, or she's okay? Like, are you giving them what they need to be successful? We live in a society, you see it on TikTok, where you can watch 50 videos of quit your job, you can find a better one that pays you more money. And it's this whole big long thing. But in reality, if you look at every person who's saying that, I'll bet you money right now, they're not training them to be successful, and they're not having that person track their metrics.
So it's not the money. You don't think it's the money, it's them?
I think it's purpose, and products. I think if somebody does not know their product, and they're not trained to achieve that product, they get bored, dissatisfied, and they're out the door. I don't think it's money.
So this comes from identifying the right person, making sure that training actually makes them successful so that they could hit some of these bonuses that you give them. And third is that you have a clinic culture that makes them want to come to work outside of them just making money, right?
Yes,
absolutely. Would that summarize it?
Yes. That's actually the first parts of my training, is you got to have purpose and product well-defined for that front desk. They have to see themselves able to win. That's the other part of it. They have to see themselves winning. They have to track their metrics and see that they're hitting their targets week after week. Then you can start looking at bonusing. Don't look at bonusing until you've given them that success.
Yeah, I love it. And one thing, let's be honest, like if you have some like superstar or even rock stars, right, in your business, they love winning. So if you can't help them win, or that your business is not winning, it's really on you why they're not sticking around. You could blame inflation, you could blame this, you can blame that. By the end of the day, is that if you don't create that environment for them to win, they're gonna leave because they want to wake up and go to a job and feel like they're winning and have purpose and they love working there.
Yeah, I know, but I want to touch on that. I want to touch on that real quick before you. It's not about giving them everything they want. It's not like me coming in and being like, oh, Rick, let me give you a hug today, and let me buy you ice cream today. Or, oh, wow, you guys, you got one new patient scheduled. Let's have a party and let me give you prizes. It's the setting of the target and them achieving the target. Now you can reward it. And by the way, in our practice, the biggest reward in our practice is not money. I'm not saying we don't help our staff or, and give them that. It's the fist bumps, the high fives. That's the culture that for the well done job, not the I did my job, right? So I don't go, it's not a participation trophy. It's a we really busted our butt and won the game kind of reward. That's what I'm talking about that helps them.
Okay. I love it.
Oh,
I'm a
somebody
big
said
fan of this
virtual
stuff.
receptionist.
Yeah. So
That
yeah,
you?
and that's actually the next topic I want to kind of jump on, D, before we go on
Yeah,
this. I actually want to talk about, because this is, I see the rise of virtual receptionists. Call Hero,
it's
we're doing this
coming.
right now. Like it's amazing. We're getting 95% answer rates and 82% booking rates. But I also see the
Yeah,
rise of these kiosks, like
it's
you
coming.
talk to a screen, it's like going to McDonald's,
Mhm.
and then you press a
Yeah,
button, and maybe if you push a button, you might talk to a clinic you could talk to maybe a virtual receptionist working in another clinic. What is
yeah,
your thoughts about this trend? And do you
yeah.
think we could actually turn our physical therapy clinics or chiropractic clinics or massage clinics into the McDonald's of like having these kiosks, right? I want to hear from you, since you are
Yeah.
the front desk guru, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So it's funny that you say that. And it's funny because somebody just called me, like I was chatting with somebody about this recently that's a good friend. And he's like, you really changed your mindset on this in the last 8 months. And I said, yeah, I have. I was talking to this guy in New York, probably it's actually been a year. And he's like, this is my idea. We're gonna boom with this. And I was like, oh, virtual front desk. Like what? And the more I started thinking about it and really looking at it, if it's done right, it could really, you've got these practices. Imagine if you could get a collective, maybe like 5, 6 practice owners, small practices, ones that are really already still struggling. They don't have that large staff that's producing at a high number. And you can get these groups together and they bring in this virtual platform. And the one that you're talking about, one of the ones that like they've got somebody on the other side of that, right? So these 5 or 6 clinics are sharing, let's say, 4 staff, and those staff can work staggered hours, so now they can cover more hours. And they've got this I always like to say that some of these remind me of, if you ever watched the Jetsons as a kid, Rosie, she was like their maid
Right.
and she was a robot. And I swear they make me think of that. But initially I was not keen on it because I was like, oh, technology, partly because I had a bad experience in an office one time where I had to
Yeah.
check myself in, but there was nobody on the other end of that computer. And so as I started to talk to people, these platforms that have a body on the other side of the computer, and that body can somebody hits the button and I see from my side, if I'm the front desk person that's working remotely, I see that you're checking in clinic A. Well, if I'm free, I can, and I hop right over there. I'm like, hey, Rick, how's it going today? I'm D. And you're no different than in the office in that sense. And you're like, oh, I'm doing pretty well. And I'm like, I see you're trying to, as one of the women I've talked to says, I see you're trying to reschedule an appointment. Let me help you with that. Right. And now you've got that
So you like
face-to-face
it.
interaction.
So you like it.
I'm definitely leaning more toward that. I've actually
It was
had
interesting,
people.
D, because we just spent the first half and you talked about that. Like people should be cutting their marketing costs and doubling down on like front desk, because like you said, there's an average of $400 that is like missing from them achieving your plan of care. And now and a lot of the people who are using the kiosk, right, it's really like slashing their admin costs down even further,
Yep.
right? So you think that like if they can't, you think that like from a front desk, call it conversion rate, you think we could achieve those type of like financial gains like
Yes.
remotely as well? Okay.
But they have to be trained. Like you can't, here's the thing, I'm not touting myself and my training here. They have to be trained.
Yeah.
If they're not trained, then you're just as responsible of not training these are people that have to be trained and be on your, like in your system. If you're going to do that, don't just be like, oh, I'm going to go hire some agency and whatever. You got to make sure these people they represent, if you're going to do that and go that way, and whatever you're
You think you could
using,
do a better job than a in person, or you think it would be like the same or worse?
if they're well trained and the system that you're using, the person can see you, I think you could get to a point where it is,
The same or better from a
better in the
patient
sense
experience
that it
standpoint?
could make you, well, for the patient, I would say the same. For you, the practice and looking at, okay, we need
Really?
to look at
I
the
don't know,
survivability.
the like
I
I maybe I'm old
Here's the
school.
thing.
Hold
Well,
on,
here,
hold
go
on.
ahead.
This is where I want to debate you, because I'm a little old school. Like to me, healthcare is very personal experience. I want someone to talk to me, you
Yeah.
know?
but they would
I
be
don't
there.
want
They
to
would,
push a button, talk to a kiosk. I already do that with my phone every single day. Now you're telling me that like it could
but
be
they would
better.
see
I don't
you.
buy that, D. I don't buy that.
I didn't say it would be right now. I said you could
Okay.
get to the point of that if it's done right, right? Some of these kiosks are pretty amazing, and the results that they're getting if it's well-trained staff, right?
Yes.
So, and it could also, you have to look at the overall picture here. If I can't see you,
Yeah.
okay, that's not, but if I can see you and you're the same guy that checked me in the last, like a week ago, and you're like, hey, D, how's it going? I haven't seen you in a week or so. Maybe we haven't crossed paths. No, but it, again, if it's just some body on the other end of the computer, or you can't see them, or, okay, that to me is not the ideal scene. And
It
again,
might depend on the demographics too. I think if you're maybe with younger demographics, like, maybe
yeah,
something in LA, like in a high end,
yeah,
like maybe that might work. But if you're maybe in your like a demographic is all seniors,
yeah,
right? Or maybe
yeah.
like they're a little more like traditional, like maybe it might
Yeah,
not
it's
perform as well,
50-50
right?
probably on that. The other thing with that is, though, there's the other side of the virtual, right? Like having a call center, right? So you're a
Yeah.
really large practice and you have a call center, and now your front desk staff that are in your offices, or even a smaller practice, if you can hire a virtual assistant, virtual, somebody who's really a rock star on the phone, it's no different than having a scheduler in your back who does that for you. But if you can find somebody that you can train really well and just do that side of it virtual, where I wasn't going to see you
Workflow.
anyway because we were on the phone,
Yeah, yeah,
and then
yeah.
I can still have that body in the office who's really focused on getting patients checked in,
Yes.
handling that payment,
Yes.
really handling that plan of care being scheduled out, and they
Not
handle
those
all
10
of
visits, not
that.
the 6, right? Yes. Yeah.
Now the phone, this is where again, you could have a group of practices where you have 6 practices and 4 staff that are helping to man your phones. Now you guys are deferring the cost across,
Yeah.
6 practices for that 4 people, and those people could have staggered hours. So now somebody's answering your phones
Yeah.
there are ways to do this, and my brain has been going. I don't think what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that not all more practices are in your thinking. You have to remember, I'm looking at it objectively. I still have front office staff in my office, and we have a very open, our clinic is completely open. So other than our eval rooms and our staff office, our front desk and our clinical side of things are completely open. So patients can hear us, see us, all of that. And that's where for me, that's, really the next thing we're looking at. So,
Okay.
you know,
Cool. So if we're gonna flash forward like maybe 5 years from now, right?
yeah.
What percent of the practice do you think would be a combination of like, say, these VRs slash kiosk slash call center versus like just traditional front desk, like in-house, like in person? You think it's 50-50, like 80
I think it's
20?
going to go, I think if it takes off, it's going to go faster than we think. And here's why. A lot of doctors' offices are already doing something similar.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily all doing it to the level that we can do it, because as PTs, we still have this desire to help people and have that relationship. And I'm not saying that's all doctors, but I do think bigger systems are already going there. And what's going to happen is they're going to train the patient to expect that, and more people are going to already be open to it, and it's going to come.
We're
Do I
being
think
trained
it's
already. The grocery stores are training us. Like the
yeah.
McDonald's is training us.
And
I'm in
that's the
Italy.
thing but that's what we need to avoid. We need to make sure that if this, as this takes off, that it's not the McDonald's kiosk or the one this was a big health system. I went for my hearing and I walk in and there's 2 women sitting at the front desk and they're on the phone. So I'm like standing there politely, like a patient, and I'm a good patient. I'm early and everything. And they're still not looking at me, and they're still not looking at me. And finally I turn away because I'm feeling awkward. And right behind me is this big sign with a computer, and it says, "Patients, welcome. Check yourselves in for us." And I had to enter all my information. I had to run my insurance card, run my credit card, which I avoided because nobody was there to handle me. And then I had to
Wow.
seat myself. And it was like, that turned me off. Like that I am not keen on. This needs to be something that when it takes off, there's that real relationship that's happening if it's going to work, or else we're going to become this digitized industry that's not what I'm not for that either. I want it to be a well-handled situation.
Okay, cool. We just got a couple of minutes before we wrap up. The
Wow,
last thing I
that
want
was
to ask
fast.
you, yeah, no, this is because we're passionate about this topic, and it's
Time
actually quite,
flies.
what's that? Yeah. I want to ask you, like, so in essence, it sounds like you and your husband are business partners owning a practice together, right? What
Yeah.
um what advice or experience you could give on like other practice owners who also do business with their spouse and also sleeps with them, but like what advice you give so that is like a healthy relationship, right? Like
Well,
that life work-life balance, is that even possible? Or you both
yes.
are doing like roller coaster sprints at the same time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Leave the practice. No, I'm just kidding. Leave your practice 1,000 miles away and then you don't know. I'm just kidding. So this took us, it's really an interesting topic that you bring up. And I actually have quite a few friends whose spouse is part of, like, they're either co-owners or the spouse is part of the practice. And, I think the first rule we all have to keep in mind, and it's the hardest rule, Mike and I finally just had to put it in on ourselves on this. You can't take business home with you. Don't bring, and he and I used to do that because we're both physical therapists. We had a rule that in the first hour that we were at home, we didn't go downloading our day with our awful patient or our bad experience we just lived and we spent time together. And we had to put that in when we started working together because we didn't always work
How is
together.
it possible if your phone's buzzing with like someone who just quit or left you a voicemail?
Well, you have to also have policy of
Might deal with it.
but when is the right time to deal with that? Is it a good idea to be looking at your phone and not being present with your spouse, because that creates problems? You're already together 8 hours a day, potentially at work. So we even have a policy now. I haven't been in the practice in 6 years, other than to be a patient. And so we don't talk about the practice heavily when we're together at home. Like, and even my business, we don't spend 6 hours rehashing my day or how that is. We talk about our day for a short bit, but then we move on to kids and family and dinner and going for our walk and stuff like that. And so, but we had to put policy in that we didn't bring the problems of work home with us. We let it stay at the office. And when we went into the office at 8 a.m., unless it was that immediate fire, but we both didn't have to handle it, right? So one of us would take that on. If the front desk quit, that was my thing to deal with. If a clinical quit, that was his.
Oh, wow.
That must mean we're done.
Yeah. No, that was good. That was good. That was a good tip. A good experience. Yeah. I hear this all the time in our community. We got a lot of people who are, in the exact same situation. Is challenging. So, but that was amazing. What an amazing show. I really enjoyed chatting with you, Dee. And just before we sign off, one last question. If you only had like $1,000, okay, how would you spend it to grow your business next month? If you only have $1,000, what would you do?
Ooh, that's a good one. Where would I put it? Okay, so this actually came up for us years ago. We were afraid to train our staff and take them off lines to train them. And if you go back to what I was talking about earlier with visits to discharge and average reimbursement and the value, once you know the value of a patient and you start really looking at, well, let's say I take a PT off lines and that's $75 for that hour to train them. And let's say I take a front desk off lines for an hour a week and that's $25 that I'm losing because they're not working in my mind. But now at the end of that month, you've spent $400 essentially, right? So now you still have $500 to $600 to spend on marketing. But what if that front desk could get, see, this is where my brain always goes, is what if they could get one more person converted at, let's just say we'll stick with that $800 we were talking about earlier, and that PT could get them to sign up for a full plan of care, and the front desk could get them to schedule that full plan of care. You just spent $400, and just even if it was just one patient, to make an additional 400. So now following month, you have $1,400 to spend, and that's the becoming more efficient and effective is
It's like a 3 times ROI.
yeah, like you keep
Okay.
doing that. Now you're in building a more efficient and effective practice. You have more to divert wherever you want it to go, but it comes from becoming more efficient and effective, and that's training staff. And it's not just front office, it's clinical need to be trained in sales too.
Okay,
So
so
that's
just
the
to
long
sum
and the
up,
short of it.
$1,000, you would spend that $1,000 to actually invest in training with your staff on something that is measurable and that works, that will actually drive revenue the next month.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you keep reinvesting that money in your staff while taking the revenue, and now you've got more revenue and you're still investing every month in your staff.
Jeez, that's amazing. Dee, just before we sign off, how do people like get to know you and find out more about you?
Yeah, so you can check me out at frontofficeguru.com and learn more about what I do and how I do it. Or you can email me at d@frontofficeguru.com, and I'll be happy to say hello and we can schedule a call to chat.
Okay, amazing. Dee, thank you very much. Like, I'm really
Thanks,
enjoying
Rick.
this session we had, and I'm gonna talk to you soon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much. You
Okay.
guys have a great day.
Okay, awesome. Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.